Live from Utah's Wasatch Front, the pulse of the Mountain West, where the issues that shape your life meet the truth that sets you free. Across Utah, across the Republic, and around the world, welcome. This is KMMU.
Okay, hey everybody, welcome to the Goud Crowd. We are in our studio, so actually you're going to be able to see Trent Staggs today in person. This is a work in progress, so if there are any technological hiccups, please forgive us, or forgive the producer, he's here today. Okay, so hey everybody, I'm really excited today. We're going to interview Trent Staggs. I'll do a little bit of introduction and then we'll get into it. But after 4 years on Riverton City Council, Trent was elected mayor of Riverton in 2017. He is currently finishing up his second term as mayor. During his terms, and I can attest to this because I actually live in Riverton, he has cut property taxes, reduced fees, and saved Riverton residents millions of dollars. I first met Trent in 2020 when I moved to Riverton from Texas. I had reached out to him to complain about the county-imposed COVID restrictions in our area, and I pleasantly found out that he was one of a few local officials pushing back against mask mandates and other government restrictions imposed under the guise of COVID. So he was a true defender of liberty when we needed it, and so I'm really thankful about that. Trent was also a candidate for U.S. Senate in 2024, where he earned President Trump's endorsement and won 70% of the delegate vote at our state convention. Trent is a businessman who has managed organizations from Fortune 500 companies to small and medium-sized businesses across finance, technology, and energy sectors. He recently served on the board of an energy company he helped to take public with a listing on the NASDAQ in 2022. He currently serves as regional advocate for Region 8 at the Small Business Administration. Trent, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks. Good to be here. And on your first live in studio episode.
Yeah.
So this is great.
You're part of an experiment. Hopefully it goes well. Well, do you want to start by talking to us about
ethos, if you will. It's just infectious. That's why I accepted the appointment. This is an opportunity that we have as an advocate. So these regional advocates under the Office of Advocacy, there are 10 of us appointed. We all have a geographic region. And the goal of the Office of Advocacy is to help identify and eliminate burdensome regulation. So for small businesses in particular, right? Those are, the federal government defines it as those with 500 or fewer employees.
Okay.
And so that really makes up 99+% of all business entity registration types. There's small businesses in the state of Utah. It's 99.4%. We have over 370,000 small businesses just in the state of Utah.
That's awesome.
I think there's some 36 million across the country. So it really is to conduct outreach, speak with small businesses, and ask them, where are your pain points? Where are your time waste with respect to federal regulation? And we have in President Trump somebody who's very serious about, it's one of his top 3 priorities is to deregulate.
Okay. I know yesterday when we talked on the phone, you gave me a couple of examples of areas where you've actually made a difference for small businesses. Can you tell us a little bit about the federal regulations that were suspended? I think it was under the food safety bill. I think people would be interested in hearing about that.
Yeah. There have been a couple. Our office has claimed about $100 billion, about $48 billion in regulatory relief. Our goal is $100 billion this year, and President Trump, wants to see that happen. But a good portion of that came right out of the gate when President Trump, through some feedback from the business community, said, we're not going to enforce this stupid piece of legislation that came through called the Corporate Transparency Act during the Biden years. And so that alone is saving billions and billions of dollars for small business owners. They don't have to spend hundreds, if not thousands of dollars to an attorney, accountants to be able to file that really unnecessary and burdensome paperwork. That's one example. We spoke about one, as you mentioned, with the called FSMA, the Food Safety Modernization Act of 2011.
Okay.
That's an Obama era piece of legislation. and they have what are called traceability rules, and it
Mhm.
becomes very complex and onerous to a small business in particular to have to go back and trace. We're talking quite literally from the very beginning. When you think of growing something, where the seeds came from, where all the fertilizer came from, and just all the way through the value chain.
Okay.
The reporting requirements, and just the technology that's involved that is required
hmm
to comply with that is pretty extreme.
Yeah.
And so that just recently, we've been successful in helping advocate for change there, and they have now put a pause on it until end of mid 28.
Oh
And
wow.
so
Okay.
they're working through right now. EPA, they're working through, and FDA is working through a lot, and I think you're going to see some really good benefit to small business owners there.
Okay. Great. Now you're also the mayor of Riverton.
That's right.
Like I said, I live there, so this is impactful for me. Recently, Riverton was in the news because they signed a 287G agreement
Mhm.
with ICE. Maybe talk about what that means for Riverton and Riverton's residents.
Yeah, you bet. I mean, ultimately, it means that Riverton residents are going to be more safe. Um, it's a great partnership with the Trump administration, with the Department of Homeland Security.
Okay.
These 287G agreements were actually blocked under the Biden years.
Oh,
Yeah, President
okay.
Biden would not allow any of them to be signed. And so I think we've gone from 100 or so municipalities to over 900 now that have participated under, since President Trump has taken office.
Wow.
And really what it does, it acts as a force multiplier. There's a couple different models one can entertain. Since our city doesn't have a jail or detention facility,
hmm
we can't pursue what's called the jail enforcement model. And some of the counties here in the state have, like Weber County, I think Utah County, more recently. But for others, they have the task force or the warrant, search warrant
Okay.
model. And so we've pursued what's called the task force model under 287G. Occurred on the part of illegal immigrants. And we just saw something happen the other week in Riverton. If
Oh,
people want to search, there was a Mexican national that was just arrested in our city just 2 weeks ago
okay.
with over 50 pounds of meth, multiple guns, and other drugs. And so,
Oh,
I asked these folks that are really kind of gone crazy over this agreement, would rather that those types of individuals stay in our community? Um, at the end of the
mm,
day, law enforcement officers have sworn an oath to uphold the law as well. And the federal
yeah.
government, already has primacy here. They've got the ability to come in and enforce immigration law
Yeah.
as they should. Again, this just acts as an opportunity for our police department to work in a task force capacity. Now, we participate in other task forces. We have
Yeah.
one with the U.S. Marshals. It's called the VFAST program, the Violent Fugitive Apprehensive Strike Team. Um,
Okay.
and we have the SWAT team and others. So our police department has multiple task forces with which they affiliate. I view this as yet another one. So does our chief, who is very, very supportive of it, and our police department is as well.
Is this that it sounds like this is available to other cities in Utah as well. I'm
100%.
interested because I think there are some other cities that probably have a much bigger illegal alien population than Riverton
Yeah,
that I think should enter it. Is that process open to them and easy to do?
absolutely. Yeah, it's easy to do. I was made aware of the 287G program by my participation in the America First Policy Institute Mayor's Council. So I was asked to participate in this America First Mayor's Council,
Yeah.
and just the other month on our agenda, they spoke about it. We had somebody there from ICE and from DHS and told us about the program, and I just thought, hey, this sounds like a good opportunity, a good thing to be a part of. And I don't view that any differently for any other municipality. It gives them overwhelmingly supportive of
Mhm.
this and want to see immigration law enforced. Um, and there have been some that have expressed their displeasure at it, but I think they're definitely, in the minority here. And it's something that at the end of the day is going to, I believe, just improve public safety overall. In addition to that one drug case that I talked about,
Yeah.
we've seen just in the past year, we saw a trend to Aragua that's been within our community, been within Harriman. We had some shootings that took place last fall, kind of spilled over into our community, and our police department was
Mhm.
actually, helping out with Harriman Police. So it's not like it never happens in our community. Some people contend, well, let's see the data. Why would you do this? You guys don't have a big problem, and I find that really interesting. And you talk about folks like, I'll never forget the interview with JD Vance, right, where they talked about that with Trenda Aragua taking over an apartment complex in Aurora, Colorado, and was it Martha?
Yeah, I think you're right.
The media personality, and he said, can you hear yourself speak? I mean, you say there's only one apartment complex, it's not that bad. Even one instance is too many, right? We
Yep.
want to be able to protect, and that's the number one duty of government at any level, local, state, national, is to protect
Yeah.
protect life, liberty, and property, and that's what we need to do.
Okay. Are there any other mayors in Utah that are part of that MAGA, or I don't know? Sorry, I don't know what it was called.
America
America
First
First,
Policy
yeah.
Institute. Yeah. No,
Oh,
I'm
you're
the only one. Yeah, it's we've got some great mayors. The mayor of Boca Raton in Florida.
There you go. So it's called Heirs of the Revolution, Our Civic Duty to Restore Our Republic. I'll just say, as we start here, I read the book. This is a fantastic read. So I really do recommend that people pick it up. May talk about why you decided to write a book now and why this book.
Yeah. Well, it really was because of the campaign experience that I had running for United States Senate.
Okay.
Anywhere I went, I mean, that was such an incredible opportunity to be able to do that because, in traveling the state of Utah, speaking with literally thousands and thousands, not tens of thousands, literally, of patriots across the state and then across the nation, as I had the opportunity to be endorsed by amazing national conservatives like Mark Levin and Charlie Kirk and Kerry Lake, Senators Tuberville, Senator Paul, ultimately, President Trump culminated in his endorsement. And so it was a real remarkable experience. And whether I was speaking with folks nationally, national conservatives, or in the state, I kept hearing the same theme over and over again. And that theme, largely, Goud, was, the levels of freedom that our founders envisioned and really what they gave us, what they bequeathed unto us, is not the same that we have today. And I think any rational human being takes a look at that statement and says, yeah, you're right. Why is that the case? Well, because government has run amok. And really, through that experience, I identified 6 factors, if you will, these 6 pillars that we outline in the book as a means of getting us back. It's a roadmap to bring us back to that level of freedom that our founders first gave us, that we all truly inherited back in 17.
Yeah, I did notice that the book starts with a quotation from President Kennedy, so a Democrat.
That's right.
And so I'm going to read the quote. I think it's actually a great quote. And then if you could maybe talk about the decision to start with a quote from a Democratic president in this book. So it says, and so this is from his first inaugural address on January 20th of 1961. He said, and yet the same revolutionary beliefs for which our forebears fought are still at issue around the globe. The belief that the rights of man come not from the generosity of the state, but from the hand of God. We dare not forget today that we are the heirs of that first revolution. So tell us why this quote to start the book.
I'm a student of history, and I loved this inaugural address. And that phrase, heirs of the revolution, always stood out to me, and why now titled my book that way, heirs of the revolution. And really the reason for calling it out is I think it's illustrative of just how far left, how crazy the left has gone today. I mean, here we have somebody, JFK would have been a Republican in my view today, just based on his rhetoric. You look at it, you look at his fiscal policy, look at his foreign policy, many of his things. And in here, in his first speech delivered to the nation, he's invoking the name of God.
Mm-hmm.
He understood that our rights in our Declaration of Independence, our birth certificate, those are inalienable, that they come from God, and that government was only instituted to protect those rights. Those rights, as he said, did not come from the generosity of the state. And I just think that's such an antithesis to what our Democrats think today and what their views are today. You know, they've taken God out of their platform. They think that government is the answer to everything, and that rights really come from government. You got to ask. That's not at all what our founders envisioned. And so I think that starting out that way with a Democratic quote, hopefully brings people kind of to the sense of how far left the left has gone, and really try to bring folks in that may not be part of, say, the kind of the base that you would think this book would normally attract.
Yeah, like people like me. You know, when you this is really kind of relevant today, because Senator Kaine just last week was saying that if by saying that rights come from God, he compared that to the Ayatollah of Iran and their theocratic regime. But here you have a true, probably like one of a president that people really look up to.
Yeah.
And he's calling out that is where your rights come from. It's a really interesting contrast.
Oh, most definitely. And Senator Kaine that's the most foolish statement I've ever heard. He clearly isn't a student of history, and he should read through our founding documents and see how often the name of God is invoked. That's our whole nation was founded, one nation under God. That was the quote revolutionary idea at the time. That's what JFK is saying. The revolutionary idea was that these rights are inalienable, that they come from our creator, not from government, and that we could self-govern. That was the revolutionary idea. It didn't require some type of hereditary, it wasn't a king, some monarchy that was going to rule us. No, it was ourselves, because those rights come from God, and we can create a government that can go ahead and ensure those rights are enshrined.
Yeah, I thought it was also interesting, like I said, rallies or anything.
I didn't.
All right.
Not done any RFKs.
He has that same speaking style, I think, like JFK, this kind of higher principles, higher. I think on some of the individual issues, I would probably disagree with him on, but in terms of the greater purpose, he's kind of more, maybe today's more Trumpian.
Yeah.
Okay, so I thought maybe we could talk a little bit about some of the chapters. People might find them, I think, interesting. Chapter 1 is actually about restoring citizenship.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe can you talk about the big takeaways you want people to walk away from that chapter with?
Yeah, I mean, maybe before even starting that chapter, just kind of stepping back a moment, the whole thesis of the book, and this is why I waited until after the election to write it, was because of Trump's victory. President Trump's victory, we have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to really right-set our government and get back to that level, or that government that our founders really gave us and bequeathed us. Without his victory, I hate to be a pessimist, but it would have been very, very difficult. And so fortunately for all of us, President Trump was victorious in that race. And we have this opportunity, and we've got to, I think, follow this roadmap to be able to get it back. And the first chapter is first for a reason. It's restoring citizenship. I don't think we need another revolution per se. We just need a restoration. And we need to be able to restore first and foremost citizenship. I think this is what President Trump means to a large extent, is make America great again. I think he means make citizenship great again. This concept of citizenship from our very founding was one that wasn't this passive entitlement or just a legal status. No, it was a duty. It was an active, and that's why the subtitle of the book is Our Civic Duty to Restore Our Republic. It's up to us. And the closing quote by JFK, it's really, he said, in your hands more than mine, my fellow citizens, will rest the final success or failure of our course.
Yeah.
And it really is. It's up to us. But we have to understand that first and foremost, that citizenship is a civic duty. And what do I mean by that? Well, that comes with a high level of participation. We've seen, unfortunately, a lot of apathy, and that's borne out in the percentage of folks that actually vote. In the 1800s, it wasn't uncommon for it to be 80% plus of registered voters were actually voting.
Mm-hmm.
We saw in the real curious 2020 election kind of a high water turnout of 66%. And that's considered good. And in midterm elections, it's often maybe 50%. Let's not even talk about municipal elections, right? Where we see maybe a 25% turnout often.
Yep.
It's pathetic. So we need to have people that are more engaged. And to a large extent, a lot of these folks, like the outdoors people, or the Christian conservatives, if they just showed up, I'm told even Oregon would be red today, for crying out loud.
Wow.
So that's interesting. We've had a high level of apathy. That apathy has been compounded by ignorance. I quote in the book, is just sadly the number of people, I think it's 1 in 3 that can even name all 3 branches of the federal government. It's a pretty sad statistic. And when you look at civic participation too, beyond just voting,
when you're doing your research on this,
Mhm.
I'm wondering, did you see any trend changes that occurred because of COVID and the 2020 election? Like, for example, I know a lot of people that were not involved in government at all before COVID, or actually the government response to COVID. It's not COVID. And then the 2020 election has gotten, I know, hundreds of people that are active now that were not active before. Did you notice any trends like that?
A few, with respect to also just engagement. We're seeing, and I mentioned in this chapter in particular, I mentioned my friend Charlie Kirk, right, and his organization Turning Point, and the level at which they have been able to drive out and turn a real 18 to 34-year-old cohort, which when he started his organization 10 years ago, it was thought that they were going to be the most progressive, woke generation or age group ever. And now we see, after 10 years of organizations like his and people, I think, waking up with respect to COVID, it's the most conservative it's been in over 50 years.
Yeah.
And those are some real positive signs that we are starting to see. I think COVID and the government's reaction to that has been a part of that. And so that engagement needle hopefully is going the right direction. But in addition to apathy and ignorance, the concept of American exceptionalism that was so prevalent and taught throughout schools has gone away. You have over 3/4 of professors or educators that consider themselves socialist or flat out communistic, that are teaching our kids, and that speaks to why so few think that America is exceptional. in all the most recent polling, which is a little frightening. You know, this isn't that we think we're better than anybody. It's that
Okay. Okay.
You can apologize for my test mode here.
Um,
Tell them the producer is sorry.
Producer says sorry. We got the comment about the Scott shots. Oh, we have a question. Do you want to answer this question, Trent? Did any other mayors reach out to you stating that they would like to enter into the 287G agreement?
Oh, I haven't got any direct no reach out right now from various mayors. We do have a meeting coming up with the Conference of Mayors where I've been asked to talk about it, and so
Okay.
hopefully more mayors will take advantage of that task force to improve public safety within their own communities. I think the reason why more haven't is because, again, they didn't know about it. I mean, even I found out about it through my participation again with this America First Policy Institute Mayor's Council. And the Biden administration, as I said, they had put a block on any new MOAs. It's called Memorandums of Agreement. They weren't signing any at all. So
Okay.
hopefully that with that opening up now with President Trump under his leadership, you'll have more, even within our own state.
Okay. All right. Let's get so back to your point about American exceptionalism.
Mhm.
In the book, you talk about how we need to reinvigorate that type of education, like civics
100%.
education in our schools. I'm wondering, how do you do that with the current crop of educators?
Yeah, it's a tall order, right? I think the best way to do that, we're talking about school choice,
Yeah. Okay.
which we talk about in the book, and that's bringing that choice and competition to government schooling
Mhm.
is going to be requisite in order for that to be turned. And
Okay.
and I think there are some other things that can be done too with respect to engagement with educators. I think we talked about in the book, Michelle, was it back in Washington, D.C., that was the superintendent there for a very short period of time.
Yes.
And she had a charted out a pathway where educators could all receive over $100,000 in income. It was six figures, but they had to be willing to walk away from the union because the union wanted everybody to be in lockstep.
Yep.
Right. And so just some of those changes and having that type of environment where teachers get paid more just through more market forces, I think will attract a better crop of educators than the unfortunately a lot of the socialists that we have today.
Yeah, okay. One of the things that struck me is you talked about the difference in treatment between homeless vets and then homeless illegal aliens that were coming in. I'll just tell you, I personally experienced this. I went with a friend of mine. You'd probably know who she is. We actually went up to the homeless shelter that's up in Ogden,
Mm-hmm.
and we were talking to the homeless people there, giving out blankets. There were multiple homeless Americans in their cars in the parking lot, some veterans, and then there were people who were clearly illegal aliens coming out of the building, well dressed. They had children, so I think that's what was going on. But talk about that. I was personally disgusted by what I saw. Mike, when you ran for Senate, did people raise that as an issue?
With respect to homelessness?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it did come up with it, particularly with our vets.
Okay.
I think it's disgraceful, as I put in the book, that we prioritized illegal immigrants above even those that have gone out and served this country. And not anymore, but definitely under President Biden and his administration. So that illegal immigration is a big factor, or the lack of enforcement of immigration during the Biden years that devalued and cheapened the sense of citizenship. And that's attributed, I think, to a big deal in terms of making making it so that we need to restore this concept of citizenship. If you don't enforce immigration law, then that goes out the window again. It really cheapens that understanding of citizenship. We've got to be able to enforce our border and be able to enforce immigration so that we demonstrate a value. We place a value or priority on citizenship.
Yeah. On that, you did highlight in this chapter the issue of dual citizenship in
That's
the
right.
U.S. I talk about that. That blew my mind.
Yeah, it blew mine too, because I had to do a little bit of research on it. This came up during the campaign as well, during the race, and I think it was 1967, a Freuchen case in the Supreme Court that actually enabled dual citizenship. And we have somewhere between 3 to 4%, I think, of the population right now that claims dual citizenship, and that's, to me, is a decent percentage. They say if around 3-4%, that's kind of that's a respectable number that can definitely start swaying public opinion. And so when you allow dual citizenship, that is something that our founders completely they were 100% against, fundamentally against.
Yeah.
And people ask, well, how do you know that? Well, because you look at the oath of allegiance that we administer during naturalization ceremonies, which I absolutely love. Let me get that clear. I'm not anti-immigrant at all.
Okay.
My grandparents some of them came from Italy, some came from Western Europe, but when they came here and were naturalized and raised their hand and pledged allegiance to that flag, there's something powerful about that. And we talk about that too, where we have a bunch of different ethnicities, but we should all be assimilated into one American culture, right?
Yeah.
We have a lot of ethnic groups, but we should all subscribe to be one culture. And so that's with this concept of dual citizenship, that oath of allegiance, getting back to that, it says right in the oath that people need to abjure any and all allegiance, right, to any other state, potentate, prince. And so how crazy is it to think that we ask people that are just getting citizenship here to abide by that oath of allegiance, yet the Supreme Court ruled back in the 60s that you can have dual citizenship. When you think about that, there might be a situation that comes up where if you're a citizen of multiple countries, you might have allegiances that you need to fulfill to the other country that could be against the interest of the United States, right?
Yes.
They might have military obligations. They might have other things that they have to do that could be in direct conflict with the United States, yet we allow that to happen. It's absurd.
Yeah, we have a comment here saying dual citizens and foreigners should not hold public positions. Did you look at if there are elected officials like in Congress or appointed judges that are dual citizens?
We didn't look at that. That has come up since, and it's frightening to me. I mean, we've had elected officials recently, right, that said that they would pledge allegiance, or that they would prioritize, I think, the interest of, what was it, Guatemala or some other country, Ecuador,
I think
above those of the
Somalia
United
is another
States.
one that's come up. It's crazy stuff.
So it is. It's absolutely crazy.
Okay. Maybe that could be a follow-up book.
Yeah. Another good data point to dig into.
Oh, okay. So just you're listening to and watching KMMU, Main Street Media, Utah. We are streaming on X, Rumble, YouTube, and our website, kmmu.org. Giving Utah a voice. Also, if you want to call in, the number is 385-899-2134. If you can't get through that way and you make a comment with your question, I am tracking those as we do the interview. So we'll continue. If we want to talk about chapter 2, this is restoring elections. I actually think a lot of people in Utah will be very interested in your observations about elections. Maybe I was shocked about the information you had about caucus systems in the U.S. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, well, that first and foremost, it was so incredibly eye-opening to me, having never run a statewide race, and something like this with the United States Senate, and to see the level of influence outside money and influence had and played in this race. So But the caucus system, is really the antidote to that. Sadly, it's been all about money now and all these outside interests that are seemingly running and controlling these races. But if we got back to the way the founders envisioned primary elections, which was through the caucus system, and we did talk about that Thomas Jefferson, the Virginia caucuses back in the late 1700s, that was the model. That was what it was intended to be. Because if you think about that caucus system, it really fosters this environment where elected officials or those aspiring to be representing these folks, they need to go and engage. They're forced into direct dialogue with other people, rather than just from 30,000 feet bombing millions and millions of dollars on TV ads and other things. And when you can do that, you can paint yourself any way you want to be. And when you're trying to appeal to a portion of the electorate that isn't as informed as those that attend caucus, and frankly, the caucus system is representative. There's a reason why they're informed, because other folks, depending on what stage they are in their lives, they may say, hey, look, I don't have maybe the time to go out and vet candidates the way you do, so I'm going to elect you from my neighborhood to go out and vet 11 candidates in the U.S. Senate race for Utah. And we had 11 candidates there. And, at the end of the day, 70% of those delegates said that Trent is the guy that should be representing us, despite the fact that I had $50,000 to $60,000 in, DC dark money PAC that came and attacked me. It was crazy during that time. We had probably 10 to 12 pieces of literature and text messages that went out to all of the 4,000 delegates, telling them all not to vote for Trent Staggs, coming from this PAC that we didn't know who that was. It was crazy, but it just shows you how well informed and how serious the delegates take it, in terms of their responsibility to their neighborhood to go out and vet. And so you juxtapose that with then being forced into a direct primary, Republican primary that we shouldn't have, pursuant to our own Republican GOP constitution, our state constitution, having more than 60% of the delegates. It says you shall be the nominee, and should have been, with given 70% of the delegate vote at the convention. But nonetheless, because of SB 54, this really stupid law that was created by the establishment to ensure that big money donors would win the day. That's really what it's all about. But still being forced into that, and then going to an electorate of 1 million plus registered Republicans across the state, we saw millions and millions of dollars. One of my 3 opponents spent $3 million in one of his PACs alone on just negative ads on me. And outspent me 15 to 1. 15 to million, roughly, to 1 million during the 6-week period between the convention and people getting primary ballots. So
that's a huge dollar amount.
It's a massive dollar amount, and it makes it even worse when you see that almost all that money came from out-of-state interests, largely tied to clean energy and green energy. That's where it came from. And people don't need to take my word for it. They can go to Open Secrets, these sites that chronicle all the spending that came in during what was the most expensive, U.S. Senate primary in Utah history.
I don't even understand what you spend all that money on. Like, are we? Yeah, I was a primary voter. Did we get like flyers every day? That's a lot of money to spend in a state like this.
It's a lot.
I guess I must have ignored it.
I think most of it is on TV. If you look at it, because the primary voter largely is 60, 65 plus. I think so. A lot of folks are hitting that demographic. The majority of primary voters are kind of in that range, and so lots of ad dollars that were spent, and like I said, from out of state interests that really aren't aligned with Utah values.
Right.
And even with all that money, interesting. I guess my the only solace that I took away from it is the fact that John Curtis did not win with a majority. He won with a plurality. Another consequence of SB 54 is that you get in these situations where people win with a plurality. We don't have a runoff in this state, so just a real interesting dynamic that happened during this past election.
Yeah. Okay. So we do have a question here, so I'll ask it. So we got a couple pipe. Do you think Cox is an illegitimate governor? So that's one question for you.
Well, I think we've seen recently that even the audit that shows the signatures,
Yeah.
they say he came up short. So, I mean, if the guy came up short, he came up short. And that's this whole signature gathering thing and the SB 54 is problematic. It really is. It should be left up to the delegates. I would love to see SB 54 completely abolished. There were attempts made by Phil. I wrote an amicus brief to support the
right.
effort, right? Mike Lee wrote an amicus brief back in 2018 when the party was challenging SB 54. It's never been heard by the Supreme Court, and I don't know why. I really wish that they would weigh in on it. I think they would. I don't know how it is legal, constitutional. Let's say that it's constitutional that a state government can tell a private political party how it's going to nominate its candidates.
Yeah.
That to me, and in speaking with others on this issue too, they think it's a violation of the First Amendment, freedom of association, you name it. There's a lot of great arguments to be had. And so that it's a horrible law.
Yeah. Okay. We have another question here, so I'll ask this to you. What did Curtis say to you at the end of the debate, and why did you wait until the closing remarks to attack him? I mean, I don't know if you have thoughts on that.
Well, yeah, it was my first real statewide run again, and it was the debate. There wasn't a lot of great opportunity. We had, 4 people there.
Okay.
And in hindsight, I would have taken a different approach for sure, and just come out. I probably would have disregarded every question and just said whatever I wanted to say. Right.
I think that's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
Right. Like actually.
Yeah. and to a large extent, I think everybody was just kind of answering the questions that were given up by the moderator. And so I think in hindsight, that was something that I could have gone more forceful on. But, there was just not a lot of great opportunities the way I saw it. We called him out on other things during the debate, particularly his unwillingness to endorse President Trump. He said he was the only one that had worked with him, but I said, well, that work history is clearly not great. When he took the votes that he did in terms of supporting the impeachment inquiry and all the other things. So, he basically had said that that was going to be a mistake, and that it would cost me.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. Well, I mean, I've run for office too. I think a lot of times you learn a lot of lessons from it, and you just become a better candidate if you run in the future, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
if I'm crazy enough to do that.
Okay. There was an interesting quote in here. This is about mail-in balloting, which is very relevant to Utah.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to read this so people could hear it. But you said, research suggests that mail-in voting championed by Marxist-aligned organizations was intentionally promoted because of its potential for voter manipulation and ballot exploitation. Talk about that.
Yeah, that's something that is out there, that is in the research that people can see, and that was, I think it was first started in the state of New York. That effort, they kind of get out the vote, and they talked about the motor voter laws, for example. It dates back to those years, because I think that they felt like if you can get people to register to vote the time they get their driver's license, and if it could be a mail-in vote at that, you could expand the electorate in a way of people like, a portion of that electorate that otherwise wouldn't be as engaged. And if everybody's getting a vote and they feel, or ballot that is, and they feel like, well, I gotta mark this somehow, even though I'm not that informed, it can inure to the benefit of big money interest. And that's what we've seen, I think.
Were there any specific organizations that you identified that had promoted mail voting that were Marxist or Marxist aligned?
If I didn't mention them particularly in the book, it's not coming to mind right now. But I yes, in the research we definitely came across some, and even referenced. There were many referenced in other news outlets and conservative radio as well.
Okay. You have made some proposals about election integrity in the book.
Yeah.
One is, I think, ending mail voting, except for military people that are medically unable to go to the polls. Talk about that. I think that's really interesting in Utah, where we have a universal mail system.
Yeah. That is one of the proposals. I said we need to go back. Very simply put, we need to be able to have election day, not election month. We've got to have paper ballots and ID. And this is not, and you got to be a citizen, to vote as well, which the SAVE Act that Senator Lee has put forth to me is just so commonsensical. I can't believe that, well, I guess we can today, right? That Democrats would vote against it.
Yeah.
But just really, really crazy to me. So those are the initiatives. And yeah, I think there are circumstances where people may need an absentee ballot. I mean, clearly our military that's serving overseas. You have other folks that may have a disability or just an issue with getting to the polls. But I think that's the exception rather than the rule. And so I like the moves that Utah started to make in terms of, moving towards the situation of having to opt in, where you get your mail-in ballot, you got to go deliver it, with an ID. Because the other problem that mail-in balloting creates is we don't know who the winner is for weeks afterwards. I mean, it's embarrassing in some of these races. Utah, Arizona, some of these states that allowed it. Florida, same night, who wins. And here in our state, in some of the more closely contested races, you don't know for days and days, if not weeks. And so that's part of the problem too. And I think it really kind of redounds back to this concept of making, citizenship great again, restoring citizenship. You look at what our founders did and the level of sacrifice that they endured.
Yeah.
And then to say we can't just take one day to go out and actually vote and cast a ballot. I think comparatively that's pretty weak sauce. We should be able to do that. And I get it. Some people say, well, let's make it a national holiday. Okay. I maybe even concede that point in the book and say, yeah, okay, whatever. I could probably get behind something like that too.
Yeah.
If it encouraged everybody. It's this uniting force too, if you will, for everybody to come out on a particular day and just actually vote.
Yeah. I moved here from Texas. In Texas, you actually had to go vote in person, and it's kind of fun. And people get annoyed by this stuff, but when you walk up, there'll be people handing out flyers. They'll talk to you about their candidates. They're excited about whatever it is. And here,
the little I voted sticker.
Yeah. Well, here they mail you the I voted sticker, which I think is ridiculous. But you're like in your house, you're sitting, I guess, at your dining table. You don't get any of that interaction. You just it's you by yourself. I think you're kind of talking about that.
Right. No, I think that's part of it too. That's part of the experience.
You also mentioned this AbScam scandal. I had never heard of this.
Yeah.
I think the listeners would be interested to hear about that.
Yeah. So this leads into my third chapter in terms of restoring moral governance. And, we give a lot of different examples about moral governance and how, John Adams is the quintessential quote there where he says our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people and is totally inadequate for any other. And that's true. And sadly, what we've seen, and the reason it's true, I'll step back and say it, because if you truly believe that our rights are inalienable, that they come from God, the right to life, liberty, the control and acquisition of property, what Blackstone called, this pursuit of happiness.
Yeah.
If those are inalienable and come from God, then any governmental law, right, is created to take away life, liberty, and property to any degree, to varying degrees, but in one form or another, it's reducing life, liberty, and property. So if you believe that, then that those are inalienable, they come from God, and that governmental laws actually reduce those inalienable rights. If you were to break a law, then the basis of any law is moral.
Yeah.
There's a morality-based lawmaking, and that's why we need moral and religious people to self-govern, and moral and religious men and women that are actually making our laws, that we're voting in to make our laws.
Yeah.
And we've seen over the years, the centuries of our country now, and particularly in the last 50 years, just a precipitous drop in morality. And we quote some of the stats. But the Abscam scandal, to your point, was a scandal in the 1970s. There was the FBI, it was a sting operation, and they dressed up somebody who he claimed to be a sheik, a really rich sheik, and he went out and bribed scores of elected officials. And I think it was only one elected official that withstood the bribe.
Wow.
Everyone else took it. And some of us might, weren't around then or forgot about that, but that was a major scandal in its day. And it just showcased the susceptibility of bribery and just the importance that people need to be of good moral standing that we place in office. And we've seen it just in the last few years get, I think, even worse. You have Senator Menendez out of New Jersey that gets indicted on gold bars and everything else he's taken home, and then you have these elected officials that trade off of early information. I guess insider trading is illegal, but a lot of the news and early information they have access to. I mean, how on earth do you describe the net worth of a Nancy Pelosi?
Yeah.
Somebody told me that Ilhan Omar has only been in Congress 6 years or so and has a net worth of $30 million. Like, how the heck does that happen? Right. So there's these things. And then we talk about the rotation of government, high-ranking government officials and elected officials that move out into the lobbying world, and then to defense contractors. And my friend Kash Patel, he told me as well that the answer to that is a 10-year ban minimally. And he would know better than anybody, because under the final year of Trump 1, he was the chief of staff for the DOD, the Department of Defense, and he saw crazy stuff going on there. With at that time $750 billion. Now it's $1 trillion budget. $1 trillion just through the Department of Defense. So we definitely have things that we should be doing, I think, and they're pretty simple fixes to help maybe mitigate the possibility of bad moral standing in terms of our elected officials.
Growing up, I really was under the impression that the U.S. is the least corrupt country in the world, with these great elected officials. And then I will just say, part of me being red pilled or black pilled has been recognizing that actually that is not true at all.
Yeah.
it's just not. It did not tend to be as brazen as in India. The politicians literally take bags of cash.
Yeah.
But I mean, with Menendez, you have gold bars. So it's
gold bars.
We're basically there.
We see, and I think USAID has kind of blown the cover off that too. You know, the way that money has been filtered from NGOs and other organizations and make their way back into the campaign coffers, or just to elected officials, maybe that have, side entities and companies that they're able to benefit from.
Yeah. Okay. So then I want to talk about chapter 4. This is restoring ownership. One of the things you highlighted in this chapter was crony capitalism. And I think that people are very aware of this issue. Talk about that to the audience.
Yeah. Chapter 4, perhaps one of my favorite, because it ties in pretty nicely with what I'm doing right now at the Office of Advocacy. It's all about how we've been so heavily taxed and regulated, that we have really what I call property in name only, property ownership in name only. And the chapter starts out with a quote from Ronald Reagan's 1964 Time for Choosing speech, where he says, "What good is it if you hold the title or deed to your property or business if you have no control over the life and death of that property and business?" And he said, such machinery exists today. And that was back in 1964. The machinery is only gotten worse. And 1913, the imposition of the 16th Amendment tax brought in the income tax.
Right? Yeah.
And what people don't realize, I think, when I bring this out, if you look at the 16th Amendment, the income tax, the way it was structured then, you were exempt, zero. You paid no income tax on what would be roughly $130,000 of today's money.
Wow.
And the top marginal rate was 7%. And you only paid that if you made the equivalent of over $15 million today. So it truly was just the rich, right?
Yeah.
That were paying with respect to the income tax. As Trump indicated, President Trump, most of our revenue was derived from direct taxation of services that you actually use in the government, like the Postal Service and others, and then tariffs. That's how the government was financed largely pre 1913. And so now we've got this taxation that started out at 0 to 7%. What are we paying today? It's crazy. We started the revolution over a stamp tax, which was roughly around 3%, they say, right, in terms of tax to the people at that time. What's happened to us? And then we have this regulatory burden, and I talked a lot about this on the campaign, where the Code of Federal Regulations has skyrocketed from just a few thousand pages in the 1950s to over 180,000 pages today. It's insane. I mean, they say the average person breaks probably 3 laws a day that you just don't even know about.
Oh, wow.
So
Guilty, Your Honor.
this is how heavily taxed and regulated we become. And we do talk about crony capitalism. Get back to your point. There's a lot of regulations that are created by these agencies that I'm now working with, right?
Yeah.
Fortunately, with President Trump's leadership, they're now issuing deregulatory RFIs because he's given the proclamation of, for any new regulation, you have to eliminate 10. That was one of his first executive orders from President Trump.
Love it.
And he also issued an executive order around Doge. And within the first 60 days, agency heads had to propose regulations that they would cut, right?
Yeah.
So there's this great concerted effort this year and through this administration, I think, to cut regulations. But over the past, what's normally happened is lobbyists from large corporations will get in and get laws or regulations on the books that make it more difficult for small businesses to succeed.
Yep.
And when there's a 2,200% ROI, return on investment, for lobbying dollars for big corporations, big pharma, you name it, that's what we put in the book. It's no wonder that they keep spending that on lobbying dollars, and why small businesses have been taking it on the chin and the average American. And those regulatory burdens act as a form of crony capitalism.
Yep.
The subsidies that we call out in this chapter too, between $400 to $500 billion a year.
Crazy.
In subsidies that go out to companies. It's not sustainable. It is crazy, but it's purely not sustainable.
Yeah. Have you identified any maybe specific crony capitalism issues in Utah?
Well, we're summarizing. In fact, we have an event tomorrow that we'll be at with the Utah Manufacturers Association. They're hosting. We're kind of summarizing a whole host of regulatory issues that were uncovered in 6 roundtables we did across the state. And there are regulations that are on the books that people just have to scratch their head at and think that was only placed there to benefit, larger corporations. I hear all the time, we hear the term too big to fail, but what about too small to succeed? And that's what the small businesses have been telling me. And they've been pointing out time after time, just the rules and regulations. Let's take, one industry in particular, this Food Safety Modernization Act that we called out, FSMA. The estimates when I was up in Logan and talking to food processing manufacturers, they said, Trent, it costs us at least 1 man year of time just to comport with all the regulations that are thrown at us. And they're idiotic. I mean, if somebody is a smaller producer that just wants to grow some honey, let's say, and sell it on the side, no regulation, right? But if you step up just a little bit, then you're suddenly hit with all of this that you have to comply with. And if you think about it, they said 1 man year per farm across the United States.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
there's hundreds of thousands of small farms across the United States, and one man year, even at $50,000 a year, let's say, you're talking close to $100 billion in regulatory impact just right there.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
and that has definitely benefited the larger corporations, because the other biggest concern the food processors told me is that you have foreign and large companies that are buying up and consolidating. There's a huge level of consolidation that's occurring right now in the food industry, in agribusiness
Okay.
altogether. And so these big companies can afford, to comply with all these regulations, and they love it. They want them to continue and perpetuate because it gives them a competitive advantage.
And I think that type of thing concerns a lot of Americans, right?
Sure.
Having foreign companies or even big companies dominating our food
And food supply.
Yeah, especially when we've seen all the problems that have come up with that.
100%.
Okay, so in this chapter, you also talk about something that I think is really interesting, is eminent domain, and then also civil asset forfeiture.
Yeah.
I've heard a lot of complaints about that.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about maybe what you found and where you think we should go on those.
Well, I mean, that's supposed to be protected in the Constitution as well, right?
Mhm.
You have to receive just compensation for property being taken. And we're seeing more and more eminent domain being used for a whole variety of purposes that purport to help the public good that really don't.
Yeah.
They go to benefit a particular developer or particular company. And so that's something the public needs to be able to be educated on and stand up and fight back on. And we're seeing, we almost saw that happen in some respect with the past legislative session here in Utah, SB 337, that I wrote an op-ed about back in March.
Okay.
That would have created these, I think they were calling them beehive. They always want to put a really nice name to it, right? But it was a beehive development district.
Yeah.
And basically said that if a project was deemed of significant impact or interest to the state of Utah, that the state could come in and designate it as a special development area and throw out whatever current zoning and planning had gone into place by the local municipality.
Oh my God, really?
Yes. That
Oh,
was
that's
fortunately, it didn't pass.
Yeah.
We were kind of leading the opposition on that, but it'll probably try to come around again.
Okay.
So we need to guard and look out for things like that. But yeah, eminent domain is an issue.
Okay. You also highlighted that hedge funds are buying single-family homes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hear about this all the time from people.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about your feelings on that.
Yeah, I really don't care for it. That was part of the op-ed too. And when I've talked a lot in the 12 years I've been in local elected office, I think we've seen 20 to 30 pieces of legislation that have tried to take away land use authority from cities and city councils. And it's all under the guise of housing, availability of housing. We're in a housing crisis and all this. And so, the numbers have vacillated, but now they're saying we have a 30,000 housing unit shortage or something to that effect. And it really bothers me because if you look along the Wasatch Front, cities have zoned or entitled over 200,000 housing units, many of which have been approved for decades that are not built. And so you really have to pose the question, why isn't the development community developing more housing when you have that many entitled units? They say, well, you got interest rates, you got labor supply and materials and all that. Okay, yeah, I understand that. But when that limited supply of housing is now going up with a big chunk of it being for rent product only, that's problematic.
Yeah.
And I've seen that happen in my own community where, we have an area along near the Bangerter Highway and Mountain View corridor that popped up, a gated community of 360 plus homes, not a single one of them for sale.
Is this over down by the
across from Costco?
Yes, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
So these types of projects have become more and more popular.
Okay.
And I call these Wall Street or large corporate interests that are controlling a lot of our housing supply. And even the Utah Association of Realtors has said about 20%, 1 in 5 homes is corporately owned in our state.
Wow.
And so think about that. If we had that level of supply, we've got about 1.2 million housing units, I think, across the state. And you think that about 1 in 5 of those are corporately owned. Would we have a housing problem?
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. God, that's crazy to me. I didn't know it was that high. And then finally, I want to talk about chapter 5 quickly. So this is restoring the family. There are a couple. One in here is on. You talked about radical gender ideology. I'm very passionate about this issue, so you touched a nerve here. So it's a radical gender on the same side, just so we're clear. Radical gender ideologies and the erosion of traditional gender roles have destabilized the family. Talk about that.
Yeah.
What have you seen?
Well, and Charlie, talks a lot about this. There's a lot of conservative organizations that call that out, and seen is that has really led to the deterioration of the family unit. I see firsthand as a mayor. You live in our community. When you have the family, a very a real strong family unit as a societal core, which I believe it needs to be.
Yeah.
You have a lot less issues in your community, right? With respect to crime. I mean, we're blessed with a fairly low crime rate in our area.
Yeah.
Education. I think educational outcomes are superior when you have 2 parents in the home. I mean, that's demonstrated as well. And then with respect to radical gender ideology, I mean, that, we've seen the results of a lot of that. Unfortunately, it's going to be, I think, quite damaging to kids in the future, that we're allowing these types of treatments that have occurred, and they're life altering and lifelong lasting. And we don't even know the consequence of that. And we've seen a lot of issues surrounding that with respect to mental health. And how certain segments of the population are maybe more prone to even violent acts, like we just witnessed here recently.
Yeah.
In shootings. So I mean, that we need to have a serious conversation around that with respect to mental health, and to the extent government can, I believe that it says that government should not take care of everybody. They're supposed to promote the general welfare. That's the phrase I was looking for. It's not provide for the general welfare. It's to promote the general welfare. And there's no better way to do that than to ensure that that the family is at the center of governmental policy.
So in here, you do talk about kind of you're promoting the traditional 2-parent household, which would traditionally be a man and a woman, right? And I guess one of the questions I have is there room in that vision for kind of these same-sex households, led households? And I ask that specifically because there are actually very conservative, we have them in the Utah GOP, these MAGA, super based, I know like a lesbian couple that is one of the most based couples I've ever met. and but they have a daughter, and they will not let any of this gender ideology stuff touch their daughter.
That's great.
Is there room for couples like that in this vision?
Well, I mean, our laws say yes, right? That that marriage has been defined in that way. I mean, my personal beliefs in terms of what my religion instructs me is that it is very important that you have those 2 different those roles are unique, right?
Yeah.
Male and female roles, and children, I think, brought up with exposure to both of those types of roles, we see really succeed. And I call that out in the book with respect to fatherlessness and how that has really destroyed certain segments of the population. I mean, my friend Burgess Owens would say the same thing with respect to the Black population.
Yeah.
and where he came from in the 1960s in Florida, and how the two parent households were intact, and they really focused on business creation and education. And then what happened? We had these governmental programs that came in and want to replace the traditional family. That's really what the book in that chapter is more speaking to, is that the government wants to usurp the family and
Yeah.
take over and take control. And so that is my biggest concern, frankly, that has happened from the 1960s onward in many communities across the country. And we need to be able to, as I say in that chapter, restore the family and the concept of the family, ensure that that's the focus, that not the government in terms of taking over and parenting, so to speak, children.
Okay. Okay, we have a few questions. Let me just ask you these. You have there's a post on X about Utah senators accepting bribes. Have you seen this post?
I haven't, no.
Yeah, it was a prominent Utah Republican posted saying that she had information that there were senators taking $100,000 to sponsor bills for people. I don't have more details on it besides that. So she said, how can this be exposed if it is true?
Well, I think an area that, and I don't know enough about it, but in terms of whether those allegations are true, let's say, but I think an area where Utah could stand to improve is campaign finance, right? I would like to see term limits. I'm self-imposing one as a mayor. I would love to see term limits in our state, number one.
Okay.
Number two, I'd like to see campaign finance reform. In the state of Utah, you're running a statewide race. You can take unlimited contributions from either an individual or a corporation. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
If I'm running for governor and I have somebody who wants to give me a $5 million check, I can accept it in the state of Utah.
Wow.
It's crazy to me and it can be a corporation. It could be a foreign corporation, somebody from outside the state of Utah, right? It could be something that's outside of our state. But then with respect to disclosures, I think we need to have a lot stronger campaign finance and conflict of interest disclosures in the state of Utah. When I was running for United States Senate, I had to disclose not only all the stocks that I held, if I was on the board of any companies, because I was on the board of a publicly traded company. I stepped down to run for U.S. Senate, but I still had, some stock in that company.
Okay.
And there were some pretty rigorous disclosure requirements. And any outside entity that I had controlling interest in, or larger than a certain percentage, I believe, I had to disclose not just that ownership, but then any client that gave me more than $5,000.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so I think with the conflict of interest and disclosure requirements in the state of Utah, that we need to look at that and ensure that level of transparency and accountability. So I don't want to just know if our state representatives have a side business or an LLC. I want to know any income they've received, let's say over a certain dollar amount, for sure.
Oh, wow. Okay. So that is much stricter than what we currently have.
And so that's what I had to abide by in the U.S. Senate, right? Anybody
that
would have given me, they said, any client for a side entity that I had or an entity that I control, that I owned, I had to report any income above $5,000 from any client.
Wow. Okay. Man, that would be okay. That's rigorous. I like that.
I would think that would bring a certain level of transparency and accountability that perhaps we don't have today. But I'm not as informed on this. I would need to look into it for sure.
Okay. We've got a comment here from Disagree Butter. It's such a shame we all find out how good Staggs is just in time for Goud to give him whooping cough. I just had a tickle in my throat. I'm sorry. I'll say I'll also say though, just reading the book, I don't think I did not realize that you're this conservative. So I knew you were conservative because you're my mayor, but I'm impressed. I was like, oh wow. I would vote for this guy for anything.
Well,
So
thanks. I got to say too, some people going into the Senate race too, I think they had a misconception that I wasn't as conservative as I truly am. Running a race in Salt Lake County, you can imagine you're taking a little bit of a different approach. And I have to say, and I will admit fully that the approach that I took, in hindsight, was not as great as I could have done. It felt like running that race in Salt Lake County of 1.2 plus million people, and we see countywide the Democrats are really controlling a lot. So a lot of advice that I got during that race was, wait, you don't want to make sure you'd say anything too conservative, and I kind of threw that out the window when I came to the U.S. Senate race. It's like, no, I'm going to run. I'm going to be who I am. And as you point out, I think I've been fairly consistent through my time being mayor and being one of the very few that stood up to COVID, the mandates that came down from the county, the craziness there, and just everything that I've ever done from a policy perspective. Being in that office, I think really speaks to who I am.
Yeah. And I understand your point about the advice you get when you're running in Salt Lake County. 100%. I received similar advice. It is what it is, but I think they're trying to get you to attract Democrat voters, but in reality, it sounds like we actually end up turning off Republican voters, because I know Mike Carey has told me that there's actually lower turnout in the more Republican parts of the county, and I wonder if some of that is because we're all being told go and appeal to the northeast part of the county where all the the blue-haired crazy liberals are, instead of just be more based for the Republican parts.
That might be where these folks that are more Republican and conservative, they feel like, well, what's the point? I feel like I'm voting for somebody who's quite generic. And I think the voters want somebody who is truly authentic. I mean, look at President Trump, right? And his victory. It's because he is who he is, and he's not part of the establishment. He's willing to fight and stand up, and really take it to the other side. And so that's what that was more of our approach with respect to the Senate race. And again, I think much truer who I am, and that's why again we decided to go ahead and write the book and kind of memorialize some of that.
Okay, we've got. I'll do a few other comments for you. You've got without repealing SB 54. This is to your point earlier. Only candidates back up with a lot of money will win. Yeah. This is kind of what you're saying. Those quote unquote candidates that won didn't even campaign. Mm-hmm. They knew they just needed to gather signatures and they would be in. It's kind of
and that's what's so discouraging. I hear so many great delegates that tell me, Trent, what was the point? I spent 12 hours at convention. We stayed, we voted for you. I represented my neighborhood, I think, with distinction. We vetted quite meticulously all these candidates, and then only to have other people gather signatures, throw our will out, and then outspend you 15, some say as high as 20 to 1, and get the outcome, because you spend that much money with the size electorate that we have. You can paint yourself to be anything you want.
It can
make you appear to be anything.
To your point, like these delegates, I know when I run, you see the same. You actually get to know these delegates pretty well.
Yeah.
When you probably met 4,000 delegates. Like when you go out there and let's say you're just traveling, do you run into delegates?
I do. Yeah, to this day. I mean, I'm traveling at the airport or around town. I've had people come up to me at dinner and say, "Hey, are you Trent Staggs?" Yeah. Okay, we voted for you, and it's been kind of interesting at times. I respond with a little bit of reservation because I'm there with my children or my wife, and I'm like, I don't know who this person is. But largely, it's been no. We were delegate, and we really wish that you would have won. They have some nicety that they end up saying to me.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see here. Oh, I guess that. Oh, you got big. He answered the Curtis question. Big props to him. So you got that. Okay. Some of these are more. It's like when people of our own faith turn a blind eye to the drug overdoses, murders, that's a sad day. Okay. Okay. I guess, do you have any closing thoughts that you want people to walk away from?
Yeah, with the book in particular, well, I guess we touched on a number of topics. With the position I have in the Trump administration, if you are a small business owner out there, if you have regulations that are impacting you, please feel free to reach out. I mean, advocacy.sba.gov has a hotline, a red tape hotline that you can call, or you can reach out to me. You can see my contact information there at advocacy.sba.gov and let me know. I mean, take advantage of the fact that you've got an advocate right here in Utah that covers, a 6-state region, but it's based here in Utah. So let me know. President Trump is very serious with deregulation. And then secondly, with the book, pick it up, grab a copy. It's on Amazon. We've been fortunate enough to have a #1 bestseller, a #1 new release, and be in the bestseller list for multiple categories, to include civics and the Constitution. It has been endorsed by fantastic people that endorsed me during my campaign, like Kash Patel and Carrie Lake and Charlie Kirk. Senator Mike Lee has also endorsed the book. So I just encourage all to check it out. As you indicated, Goud, it's a pretty short read. It's only about 170 pages. I don't really care for those types of books that are they could stop a bullet, right? I mean, they're so big and I can't consume it easily. This, in a 3-hour, plane ride or trip, you can pretty much read through the book. And I'd love to hear your thoughts, love to hear your comments on it. So go to Amazon and pick up a Kindle version or paperback or hardcover, and let me know what you think of the book. But this truly is the blueprint, I think, the roadmap to get us back to that level of government and inheritance, right? Because we were the heirs of that revolution, the inheritance that we rightfully have and deserve based on the tremendous patriotism and tenacity of our founders. So
Yeah,
that's the least that we can do.
Do you have an Audible version?
Not yet. I have had. We need to get in. I've had a couple of folks here offer up a studio to be able to do that, and the publisher, Post Hill Press, that did Kash Patel's book, that's how he referred me to them, has offered to do that as well. We just haven't taken the time yet to do that, but need to do it.
Okay.
Get your Office of Advocacy up on the.
Oh, well, thank you.
I was watching the Sex and the City sequel. It's called And Just Like That. And she actually has to record an audio version of her book. they show it. It's kind of interesting. So once you do that, it'll be interesting to hear what that experience is like.
Well, and that's something perhaps I should just allow somebody else to narrate it. But people have told me, no, we want you to narrate it. It's always better to be in the author's voice. And that's where I just haven't taken the time to do that yet, but have had a lot of requests for the Audible version. So I think we need to jump on that sooner than later.
And then where can people find you? Social media?
Social media at Mayor Trent Staggs, across Facebook, Instagram, on X, and all those different platforms. We're on Truth Social as well, so you can check us out. Okay,
cool. Well, thank you very much for coming on, Trent. We appreciate it. What are we gonna? Should we just cut it?
Here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna pause for a couple of minutes. I'm gonna put up the station break music.
Okay.
So.
Okay, folks. So we thank you. We will be back. We're gonna pause for a couple minutes and then we will restart. I think this camera should turn off, right?